All right, one more time. I'm Dylan Schneider,
And I'm Spencer Negri, and we are at my house currently, and it is 1:48 p.m.
and here we go on quiz 4 with question number 1 being a company wants to improve the accessibility of its online product catalog for blind visitors. I can advise them what design actions to take according to the following guidelines respectively. Guideline 1.1, which is called text alternatives. In this section, it describes that we should use bigger and bolder or different style text. More on that later from Spencer. To help like half blind visitors who can't see particularly as well. So then we'll have different font sizes so that they can read it better. This will also we can also use text to speech, where we'll have a speech recorder read the text on the web page so that a blind visitor could fully understand what's going on the web page to interact with it, especially a catalog where they're going to buy things.
So on the guideline 1.4, which is distinguishable, which generally says that everything has to have a certain contrast, so a wide range of users can distinguish between certain aspects of like the web page. So for example, we might suggest that all the text and images have a contrast ratio of at least 7:1, so it's easier for them to distinguish things. On top of that, we might allow the users to customize the size of their text, which is what Dylan was talking about. For someone who might have trouble reading, we would allow them to make the text larger or a different color so that it's easier for them to distinguish among other things on the page. And lastly, any sort of images of text any sort of images would be able to be resized, and if there's audio on the page being played, for example, they would be able to stop it with a space bar instead of having to look through the page to find like a pause button. They could just use a button on the keyboard to stop it.
All right, question number 3 will be explaining the difference between feedback and visible system status. Found a pretty good example of the Mac OS install page. You can see that it says the name of the operating system, El Capitan, underneath a picture of a hard disk. And above text it says installing, so it's actually showing you the system status visibly. It's showing that it's installing the operating system El Capitan to your hard disk. And there's also feedback on this page.
So feedback is gives you more of a specific idea of what is going on, and in this case, it's how much time is left and how much more work is necessary before the operating system is installed. All right, so moving on to question 4, which is when my manager is contemplating installing surveillance cameras, I can explain to my manager that there are political consequences.
Yeah, so when a customer walks into like a retail store for say, they might not necessarily want to be on camera, and when they're in a store shopping, they kind of feel like that they should be free and can do whatever they want while they're shopping, and may not really feel emotionally stable to be on camera. And obviously, this can be even more of a privacy invasion if it's in certain places like the bathroom or the changing room or the dressing room or whatever. So the spot of the camera definitely would have to come into play, and the whole camera in general. All right, so now for question number 5, we're going to describe Fitts law, which we remember as the log base 2 of 2D over W.
So Fitts law was created by Paul Fitts, which is it's essentially a function that describes how long it takes for someone to move a mouse pointer, for example, to a target area. And the equation says that the time that it takes is inversely proportional to the width of the target area, which makes sense because the smaller the target area, the longer it would take someone to get in that target area. And it's directly proportional to the distance that the mouse is away from the target area, which also makes sense because the farther you are away from something, the longer it's going to take you to get there. So yeah.
All right, so on to question number 6, and that is I can give an example of how Apple as a company pays attention to accessibility, and we'll mostly be talking about the iPhone and iOS.
Yeah, so one example on the iPhone of Apple paying attention to accessibility is the fact that you can have your voicemails transcribed for you. So essentially, if someone leaves you a voicemail, instead of you having to listen to it, you can just read it in a transcript. And another example is just Siri in general, which could help anyone who's deaf or blind if they need to control their phone in any sort of way. They obviously don't have to use their fingers. They can use their voice, which is obviously much easier for them.
Yeah, so as Siri's a big one, you can basically just tell Siri, like you said, you can tell Siri anything and she will do it. Another thing Siri can do though, or what's called voiceover, and basically just it transcribes and says everything that is happening on your phone. So even if you're on a web page or you're texting, in every app, the voiceover accessibility command will read everything aloud so that people who are blind would be able to still understand what's going on the phone.